Welcome to the Industrial Edge podcast with me, Joe Haggis. In this podcast, we sit down with a broad range of professionals who are involved in a wide range of industrial settings. From maintenance and reliability professionals, facility managers, engineers, through to operations and production leaders, consultants and business owners who support all things that keep the modern world we live in safe, productive and efficient. We discuss the unique stories our guests have been on personally, while getting into some of the deeper details, challenges and opportunities that face them in their particular industries and areas of specialization. I hope you enjoy the conversation. We've got Shane Scriven, right? I think I'm saying your name right there. Shane Scriven from SAS Asset Management. You're one of the recommendations, right, from my first episode with Trent Taylor.
Yeah. Okay.
So good to have a recommendation, first of all, which is fantastic. I interviewed someone called Andy Gailey this week, who's based in the UK. And he's got his own opinions on AI. And AI seems to be something that you seem quite all in on. So I'm going to start with the question around Andy Gailey. So he thinks AI is IP theft, maybe some of these large language models. And he was a little bit controversial. I won't say controversial, but just different in his take on AI, and he had his own thoughts on it. So for me, Shane, I can see your business, and you seem pretty all in on AI, especially AI within asset management. Can you tell me why?
Tell you why? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah,
Because
please
it's exciting,
tell me why.
Joe. Right? That's because it's exciting. It's new. We have created for ourselves as asset owners, as business owners, what I often refer to as the most expensive filing cabinet known to man, and that is the filing cabinet of asset data that's not being used, Joe. And for the most part, most organizations don't even open the drawers of the filing cabinet. For example, you've got a SCADA system, right? It is logging sometimes at 100 hertz, right? Collecting all these data things, these data points. Very rarely does an asset manager dive into the historian and produce some form of insight or intelligence from this. Now, we've built this wonderful filing cabinet and we just simply cannot leverage the data there. And that's really where artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science unlocks that for us, Joe. That's why we're all in. To be frank, to be honest, we spend more of our time doing data science and machine learning, right? AI then comes along after that, right? And takes those insights and produces something that asset owners, asset managers, asset maintainers can leverage. And so for me, being a long-time computer science nerd, mathematics, probabilities, simulation, modeling, this really represents, I suppose, the biggest opportunity for me to really showcase those skills, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. I think I love the analogy around the filing cabinet that we've built in businesses and around the globe, right? That isn't being tapped into, it's not being accessed. And I know I spoke with Luke a few weeks ago and we were talking about data, right? Collecting data. What point do we say stop? But also, how do we put data and line data up so we can actually make good decisions from it, right? And like you say, right? I think, and you believe, right? AI is the key to that, right? In terms of bringing all these things together, which is great.
And Joe, I've also got a saying that a lot of people in my industry disagree with. So I like to use it. Is that data in itself is not an asset. In fact, data in itself, a data point, right, is borderline worthless unless, and if I could underline unless we do some analytics on that data, we leverage that analytics to produce some insight, and subsequently use that insight to make a decision. If we don't do those back three things, there's zero worth in my mind in collecting the data. Right. And we see it all the
Absolutely.
time. I'm sure you have, right? We're collecting data for data's sake. We're not actually using it. We're not leveraging it. And so I like to say that if we're not doing those sort of three back end things, right, we fail to get any value. Now, assets, you can go to ISO 55001 and look at the definition of an asset, and it's that produces value, right? That value only comes from analytics. Right. And as a really simple example, what is the use of having one data point for a failure time, Joe? So, the asset, whatever it is, a pump, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, so pumps and motors, right? Everything generally comes back to that for mech engineers. We have a log in our CMMS or our SCADA system that pump number 1 failed on the 1st of January at 1 a.m. That's data. Okay. Now, if you look at that, it's worthless, right? What can you do with that one data piece? It's when you put it in concert with all the other failures, you can then say, oh, okay, mean time between failures X, right? My failure probability distribution is a Weibull distribution with a 2.7 and 7,000 eta. You can start to do those sort of modeling things. That becomes the analytics. Then you produce the insights with that, Joe, and say, well, based on our operational context, we should change that pump every Y years or whatever it is, and that's
Yeah.
my decision. So there's a really simple explanation of how we can turn that worthless data on its own into some insights and subsequent asset management decision making. Now that's really easy to do on a pump basis, right? But when you're talking about 300, 500, 600,000 assets, Joe, you're creating a rod for your own back. That's where machine learning and AI can help us.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, data as it is on its own, a single point, if it doesn't provide that insight, doesn't give that story, and we can't use that, then, it becomes almost, like you say, worthless unless, like you say, underscoring that unless. Yeah, great insights. Good start, Shane. I think, really, really interesting in terms of hearing your take on it. I suppose my question or follow-up question to that is around, AI being the key to unlock. Say maybe not the key to unlock it, but again, machine learning, analytics, all these things on their own, and that has obviously improved a lot over the past number of years, should we say? But with AI, it gives us that. It's kind of the heavy lifting that it's doing for us, right? And it's giving us that insight. It's giving us that ability to go through that data, to ask the questions, maybe to a chatbot within a framework, and answer and give us insight, right? Which is great. Okay, brilliant. I'm gonna so take a step back into talk about like you said before, you're a mechanical engineer by trade. You spent time as an engineer from I keep saying this, snooping on people's LinkedIn profiles seems to be a good way of understanding the careers.
It's there for that reason.
It is indeed. So I'm using that heavily. But talk us through your time as an engineer, 2008 to 2019. I know you spent a couple of years before you started your own business as well with KPMG.
Yeah.
But talk to us about the highlights during that time. See, from what I can see, you've got a real passion and an interest, based around data and AI and statistics and reliability, etc. So talk us where that came from and your career up until until you started your own business.
Yeah, so thank you. Let's go down memory lane here. This will make me feel a little bit old, Joe. I'm only 40 years old, but I sometimes feel a bit more than that. Joe, yeah, I started my career. So I'm a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, but to be frank, I've never done a day of mechanical engineering in my life. I went straight into maintenance. In fact, my first job was as a design engineer, a mechanical engineer, and global financial crisis hit, and I was promptly made redundant in under 6 months. So that was a hard slog,
Tough start.
hard way to learn the rigors and the real life of the working world. Then at that point, I was quite desperate for work to get back into the engineering workforce. I found SKF. So SKF Australia, your listeners, I hope they're familiar with SKF, but the world's largest bearing manufacturer. So I took a role with them as a condition monitoring technician, Joe. So I travelled Australia, undertaking condition monitoring activities for their clients, predominantly vibration analysis, but certainly oil analysis, thermography, and a little bit of ultrasound, but not too much of ultrasound. Nice. At one point in time, I had the claim of having walked every conveyor belt within BHP's asset register. So that's fun.
It's a lot of walking.
And that's a lot of walking. Yep. So I've got some great stories of there. The most remote mine site I ever went to is now a South 32 mine site, Gemco Mining in Groote Eylandt. It's a fascinating place. Your listeners, just have a Google of BA or South 32 Gemco and see that mine site. That was fun. So I spent a few years kicking around there and doing that. Got into bearing root cause failure analysis and working with clients to identify root cause of their bearings. That was very, I suppose, it's a crucible moment for me around getting into root cause. Then that's a really good single person lifestyle, Joe. Traveling Australia, and I met my now wife and mother of my children, and decided to come back to Melbourne proper, and settle down, if you like, and found a role at Sugar Australia, which is food and beverage industry, CSR sugar that you buy here in Australia, and worked as a site reliability engineer. Now, that was a really interesting moment in my career, because previously, just working with SKF, Joe, I'd only ever attended, of course, client sites, and I'd, give them a VA, what I would call a shit list, right, of things that they needed to fix, and then I'd come back the next month and nothing had been fixed. And that was, quite frustrating. But then as I actually have assets of my own now, working in Sugar Australia, I now appreciate that the actual fix is the hard bit. Identifying the problem is the easy bit. So I got an appreciation then for that. So I spent 3 years basically applying the condition monitoring program at Sugar Australia in Yarraville there. Then took
Nice.
a promotion into the pulp and paper industry. So I did another 3 years there in the pulp and paper industry, and got more into, I suppose, engineering, management, leadership space. So at our biggest, we had a crew of 42, I think, across all trades, maintenance planners and the like. So I managed that end to end. 2 paper machines, 9 converting machines, and a whole automated logistics arm as well. So we did that. And then at that point in time, we had our firstborn. She's now almost 9 years old, and I could not keep getting called in at 2, 3 in the morning, Joe. That was too hard for a young dad. So I took a job in consulting, right, because it's easier, and then moved into consulting proper here in Melbourne. Ultimately ended up working with some government clients through KPMG. I really treasure my time at KPMG. I worked really hard, but got a lot out of that. And now we're in our 4th year now, running SAS Asset Management, Joe, and we bring all that, I suppose, knowledge and experience. We've now got a small team. We like a small team. Don't want a big team, Joe. And fundamentally, if I'm in an elevator with you and I've got 5 seconds to tell you what we do, is, Joe, we help our asset owners understand their strengths and weaknesses. Right? We help them model and simulate what the future might be, Joe, and ultimately we help them make the right decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, nice, brilliant. That's it's a great overview, and I really like the change from going from your time at SKF as well, and supporting, let's say, asset owners to being the asset owner, like you say, during your time in the sugar mill, right? I think it's a good sort of insight of change, that, right? I suppose I've done it the other way around. I previously were with was with Amazon
Mm,
as the asset owner, and now I'm with a company that supports businesses and their assets. So it's
absolutely.
important to know the both sides of the coin, I think,
Mm,
because there's different tensions and challenges that exist, of course. But
absolutely.
so especially about your time at KPMG, you said you
Sure.
worked hard there,
Mm.
and I'm sure that provided you with a lot of insight. A couple of years
Yep.
there, how what's your most memorable moment at your time with KPMG, and how did you
Yeah.
find that change from more being, let's say, asset owner or supporting asset
Yep.
owners to then consulting on that? How was that change?
That change was actually seamless, Joe. And
Okay,
like I said, I really relish I really enjoyed my time at KPMG. I moved there for two reasons, Joe. I moved there because they were delivering a really key project in Melbourne in our rail network called the Asset Condition Assessment Project, Joe, and that was still is quite a large program of work. I won't go into the history of that, but it's an absolutely monumental and behemoth undertaking by the state government ultimately, and that I've been very fortunate enough to follow that project and be involved in that project almost for the last 10 years, from many iterations and many phases. So I went there for that project, and also went there for a couple of the key people that worked there. So Ben Mailer and Andrew O'Connor, Andrew's still there, Ben's moved on, we're partners previously at Relkin Engineering, and I've always been fascinated with their careers from afar. They are by far the lead reliability engineers that I've ever come across. Their minds are amazing. So I went there to just be around those people.
nice.
And the seamless part, to come back to that, Joe, was I recognised that whilst I didn't have the PhDs and the formal training, Joe, that these two partners had, and they were wealth of knowledge, equally being self-taught, I could measure my knowledge and my experience against theirs. And I found, yeah, sure, I was lacking in some theoretical aspects, but certainly my practical experience about being called in at 2 and 3 in the morning and dealing with, pumps that are still bright red after 2 hours of being shut down, that experience really took me to a similar level. And it was really validating for me being self-taught. And additionally, the modeling and simulation knowledge and experience that I got whilst working in that team. And there's another couple of reliability engineers there that I really look up to. One being Luke DeJager, taught me so much. So I really did enjoy my time there, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. Really good to hear. You've got, there's some real experts there and mentors for you,
Mm,
right? And I'm sure you've
absolutely.
become a mentor in your own right with your team, as you mentioned, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's important in engineering in this business, right? Is having people that you can look up to and you can see
Mm,
the pathway. And you mentioned it, right? You saw their career, you were fascinated with their career and what they'd done. So yeah, like you say, you spend 2 years at a business, but if you spend it around great people and people that you learn a lot off, then it's it can be like 5 or 10 years in a business where maybe those people aren't around. So yeah, fantastic to hear. Really, really interested. Um, Talk us through now. Going into your own business, SAS Asset Management. I know you're heavily involved as well with the Asset Management Council. Talk to us about those past 4 years, and talk to us on what the challenges you've faced, growing and launching your
yeah.
business, but also what you're most proud of. Like I mentioned, I'm sure you're a mentor to some of your people that you employ as well right now. So talk us
Yeah.
through that journey, and yeah, we'll probably go into the Asset Management Council a little bit as well after that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I don't truly remember why I decided to spin out, for want of a better term, of KPMG into SAS Asset Management. Noting I had long wanted to do that. In fact, to be truthful, I'd hatched a plan when I was at the paper mill to ultimately work for myself and own a business. Um, I don't know. I can't remember, or perhaps I don't want to remember the reason why I chose that time, because it was in the depths of COVID-19 lockdown in Melbourne. And that's
Yeah,
a pretty brave thing to do, especially when you can't go out and meet a client, right? When for your listeners, Melbourne had some of the worst
it
lockdown
certainly did.
conditions in the
I
globe.
certainly remember that.
So I don't know why that was the timing that felt right, but I did it anyway. And so yeah, that was 4, maybe 5 years ago. It has been a hard journey, Joe. In fact, I get this question a lot. A lot of people ask me, if you, in a roundabout way, if you had your time again, what advice would you give yourself, and would you still do it? And to be honest, Joe, I don't know if I still would do it. Like, I love my business. I really enjoy my business. I really enjoy working on my business and meeting the people. But I was really naive as to how much hard work it is. We've had a lot of challenges from a workload perspective that we've had to work through. We've had to adapt and change. For those who are close with our business, they would recognize, pardon me, that we had 6, I suppose, service offerings that we would deliver, and we rationalised that down to 3. Right. So now, Joe, we really specialise. We're not generalists, and the idea is that when people hear the name SAS AM or SAS Asset Management, it's synonymous with helping our asset owners understand their strengths and weaknesses. We do that through assessments, auditing, and benchmarking. So we are fortunate that we're one of only 4 Australian-owned businesses to be endorsed by the Institute of Asset Management in the UK to undertake asset management maturity assessment, and we do comprehensive statistical benchmarking on that. And so that's a real specialist niche area for us, and
Nice.
that really is around clients wanting to go for 55,001 certification, and so we can really help them on that journey. We have some big clients that we manage, their whole maturity assessments. The modelling piece, right? We recognise that a lot of clients, and specifically a lot of our clients, can't necessarily afford or maintain the overhead of advanced analytics, Joe. And what I mean by that is, some serious servers with some serious GPUs and compute power and storage. We manage that for them, and we provide advanced analytics as a service. And so we specialise there in that, and we build bespoke custom tools and the like to fit their unique context. And then lastly, we do the typical advisory work and help them, with all that, help them make the right decision in the end. So we really just consolidated and specialised in 3, and that has turned, I suppose, the fortunes of our business around tenfold, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. Really good. I really like that. Yeah, again, you went from the 7 to the 3, and I don't know why 3 always seems to be the magic number in many things.
Yeah.
But I think, like you say, the point you're making is he's been specializing and getting down into that niche area, like you say, and I think that's a real good milestone, and something you of course should be proud of, is being one of 4 Australian businesses
Very proud.
that is
Yeah.
recognised with I am, which is, I'd say, I'm learning more, let's say, more about asset management generally, but that's certainly like almost a gold standard for sure in regards of asset management, the Institute of, and based in the UK, right? That and obviously we've got the ISO standards as well. But no, brilliant. Shane, talk us through your your time with the Asset Management Council,
Yeah.
how you got involved with them, and
Mm.
your time being on the Asset Management Council. You're giving back to the wider asset management community, which is really great.
Mm.
Talk us about when you first got involved, what inspired you to get involved, and your work with those.
Yeah, cool. It's a really passion project. It has to be. It's a volunteer role. It's a member-based organisation, the Asset Management Council of Australia, formerly the Mechanical Engineering Society of Australia, MESA, long time ago.
Okay. Okay.
And one of the founding organizations of ISO 55001, and some of the legends, you could say, in our industry were, inaugural board members of the Asset Management Council were pivotal in taking, the development of PAS 55 into 55001, and there's many amazing people there. So getting involved, Joe, it was a no-brainer for me. I was actually drawn to the Asset Management Council has special interest groups, and you can talk about asset management generally, or you can talk about specialist subjects. And I joined the special interest group for maintenance and reliability engineering, of which I was a chairperson, a national chairperson, for a good couple of years there, Joe. And that special interest group, that committee, is charged with providing content and learning opportunities for the Asset Management Council members. Again, it's a member organisation. Everything comes back to members' needs and wants. And subsequently from there, as I sort of matured my understanding from maintenance and reliability into the more broader asset management perspective, and I still do this, I volunteer as a committee member for the Melbourne chapter, which is one of the biggest chapter in Australia of the Asset Management Council. And we deliver, again, the program of work for the Melbourne members. And so part of the committee there, so organising that program is a big thing for me. I enjoy my time there, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think you mentioned, right, by members, for members ultimately, is the key part there. And like you say, I think it's it's good that you've got those specializations as well, right?
There's a whole certification scheme which is backed up by the world partners in asset management. So it's a global scheme, Joe, and that is the design there. Again, the Asset Management Council was a founding member of the world partners, and that is a certification that you can take across the globe. I'm fortunate enough to have the certified senior in asset management, and my colleague Jonathan's the highest level, the certified fellow as well. So it is a really important scheme, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. And there is I think there is these lots of different bodies out there. I'm certified with the maintenance and reliability professionals, and again there is a lot of different ones out there. I think it's great though that there's one in Australia again for asset management, because asset management is so broad, right? Like you say, there's those specializations with it. I still now always look at asset management and the niche areas of it, and I've spent most of my time in maintenance, reliability, facility management as well now. But asset management covers, it's really going from design and specifying all the way through to the asset end's life cycle, right? And it is a life cycle, of course, which is great. So no, really good to hear. Really good to hear. Shane, I'm going to ask you now a little bit about ISO 55000. We're on the topic of asset management. I saw you post the other day around talking about AI and the different challenges that will bring now for businesses within ISO 55000 and auditing them. How do organizations overcome the governance and compliance challenges? I know you posted specifically about this, that are going to come from AI and using AI within ISO 55000. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
That is a wicked topic, Joe, where I'm not entirely clear there is a solution there, and I think that's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked that, because I do really feel that there is space here for the technical committee for the ISO. I think it's Technical Committee 251 of ISO that manages the 55001 standard, to perhaps provide some guidance on this, on the adaptation and adoption of AI in asset management. And for your listeners and viewers, the article, as a auditor and assessor of maturity and getting clients ready for 55001 certification, AI and the use of large language models in the asset management process becomes a bit tricky, for us, from our perspective. For example, we're all for the use of, maybe you have a network graph of your technical documentation, or a RAG pipeline of all your standards and procedures, and you chat with that, and you give it some data, and you help yourself make a decision, right? And all for that. Like I said, that's great. But then there's the management layer that sits on top of that, and how do we validate and verify that, that is the right decision to make? Where's the guidance on that, right? Because an asset management system, right, Joe, really is designed to protect the individual in the decision-making process. So we can make the decision in accordance with our guidance from our asset management system. So if our large language model is helping us infer those decisions, where's the checks and balances at the organizational level to ensure that the model, like the simplest thing, which model do you use? Right, which model, right?
Yep.
And your previous guest, sorry, I forgot the name, talked about IP
Andy,
theft. That's a very real thing, right? The initial models on early days, right, scrape the internet, right, and the coding agents scrape the GitHub repositories. Yes, I agree, absolutely, it was IP theft, but the governance that sits on top of that is a real wicked problem that I don't feel that there is a clear-cut answer. And that's what I love about asset management, Joe, is at the point where you think you're an expert in asset management, you've lost the plot, because it is such a broad thing. You need a team to undertake an audit and assessment, because you need the variety of knowledge and experience and expertise. And AI is this sort of new one here that's sort of entered the fold. A committee member of ours at the Asset Management Council Melbourne, Tom Carpenter, and I were talking about that just this week. So it is a very real problem, Joe. It's not necessarily a problem, but there needs to be a solution. And when auditors and assessors come and say, hey, how did you make this decision? Let's chase this down. And you just simply say, I asked the chatbot. Well, that doesn't cut the mustard, Joe.
Yeah, fascinating. Really, really great to hear your take on that. And in terms of it being, we're out on the precipice, right on the edge there with the technology and the challenges that will come with it, right? Like you say, I think that's something I'm doing. My current role is around governance. Like you say, how did you being able to explain to an auditor or to someone, how have we come to that decision, right? Like you said, we want to make sure people are making the right decisions by supporting them with that process of getting them to the right decision from an asset perspective, asset management perspective, which is great. So, no, really good, really good. Talk to us, Amipu, I think you call it, Shane. That's I think hopefully I'm saying that right. Tell me about that.
We'll
I'm interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
please explain that. I'm interested.
Sure,
Amipu.
So that's our little. That's always a little. I should probably need to do it justice. That's our terminology, or our name, Joe, for our offline secure AI machine learning data center. So as part of our advanced analytics service offering, and as I said before, we recognize that clients can't necessarily manage and maintain and procure the level of compute resources required for some of the high-end analytics. And we're talking very large models that, Monte Carlo, Latin hypercube type simulations that can take on a laptop here, might take 10 weeks to run, right, with our graphics cards and our what's called an InfiniBand fabric for NVIDIA graphics cards. Google that. That's really interesting. We can cut that down to a matter of minutes. And time is money, right? Especially
Yeah,
if you need
absolutely.
to make strategic decisions and the like. And so Amipu, Asset Management Intelligent Processing Unit, is our sort of acronym there. And that really represents our offline secure data center. And we're actually just racked in a new server today with some really high-end NVMe solid state drives for crazy fast read-write storage. And when you're doing, inferencing and training and fine-tuning large language models, which we can do up to a certain size, you need that compute speed. And so Amipu really represents that system that we have. And, a lot of our clients don't want their data going into a large language model, and who knows where it goes. That's fair enough and frank. I appreciate that. And so they can leverage our offline system to give them the same outcomes, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. So the system. So you're explaining there, well, the system that you've got, that's a standalone kind of server system that you have, you own. You're not using a sort of an AWS cloud, sort of S3 sort of server there. And I must admit, I'll just say at the start, I'm definitely not an expert in terms of servers, and I didn't spend my time at AWS at Amazon, although it was on the other side of the business. But it's interesting, right? That you're using a local server that you own, and again, businesses can keep it offline, and that is a massive thing, right? Again, that's a huge topic in itself around, like you say, where's that data going? Data protection, this day
Yep.
and age is such a hot topic, right? So,
Mm.
you don't want it going off to a server that might be offshores, and you don't know where that data is getting used, right? So, yeah, brilliant,
No doubt.
really good to hear.
And it allows us, Joey, to produce some really, really cool, really fascinating bespoke tools. We have a couple of clients that leverage that compute power, whereby they can upload decades of maintenance history into a tool that we make for them, a web-based tool that's
Yeah, well,
housed on our system. They can access it through secure VPNs, which leverage their Microsoft IDs and the like. And so that we're going in currently in the process of getting cyber management system 27001 certification there. But we can build these tools that they can safely and securely upload their data, produce some form of artifact. Again, this is that data to insights sort of lineage that we talked about before. And it keeps everything off the web, right? Again, there's no IP theft of these models in there, right? So it is a real unique selling proposition for us, Joe.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, to maybe to outlay those fears around IP theft, etc., and that we touched on, that's the solution, right? Is a server that's again bespoke for your clients that they can use. It's offline. It's not going into a server cloud somewhere. So yeah, brilliant. I've got a question here, Shane, which is, talks to us about the challenges, barriers, and tensions of AI adoption within asset management and wider industrial community. I might ask you
Sure.
about maybe, you seem like you're really on the front foot with this, and a business that's really leading, especially
Mm-hmm.
AI within asset management, right? Which is great, and especially around the data analytics, those insights.
Mm.
What do you see as the kind of barriers to adoption? Are there any barriers to adoption or any tensions?
Mm.
We've discussed a little bit about the governance challenges, etc. But what
Yep.
are maybe the barriers of AI adoption, or you still get do you still get skeptical customers that aren't
Absolutely.
quite on board, and how
Yep.
how do you talk them through and take them, explain that in a way that's digestible for someone that might not have a clue about AI?
Yeah. So I do a fair bit on LinkedIn, right? Joe, you'd see that. And I recently did a poll on this exact topic, and the data that came back from that poll, by and large, the results were not funding, right? So funding is not a barrier here. And maybe that's just my audience and a bit of a bias there in understanding what we do, but we actually break down that barrier because, like I said before, having and managing the compute power, right, is costly. So you can use third parties like us and really bring that cost down. So actually cost is not the barrier. I think skills are a large part of the barrier, Joe. AI has become synonymous with the chatbot, and that is only one. It is a large aspect in the commercial space of AI. A commercial tool is AI tool without a chatbot interface just doesn't feel like AI, right? But you can actually do a lot without the chat interface. So it's actually skills and recognizing the first the possibility that could happen, but second then understanding that there are more secure and safer ways to deliver an AI solution. And what I'm talking about there is, we talk about hallucinations. Right, that's always a big barrier for in asset management. What if the AI model has a hallucination and suddenly we buy 10,000 spares that we only use one each year, right? Da-da-da-da. So, yep, okay, that's a very, very real problem that you're describing there. But a lot of then the knowledge that is missing is there are a lot of models that can be used as what we call guardrail models, Joe, and they actually sensitize and do something up front before the message or the prompt, right, gets to the actual working model. Right.
Okay.
So there's some massage there through to protect you. Right. And then on the backside, when that output comes from that working model, there are guardrail models that can deal with that. Now, in industry and IBM, the Watson model, the Granite models, pardon me, with IBM do a really good job of this. But there are specialist models that do this. Now, we see this a lot with inappropriate content and things like that. And so you'll see when you're using the large commercial models, as they'll say, I'm not allowed to do that. That's actually not the main model that's talking to you there. It's guardrail models that are talking to you and sending that back. So the skills and the knowledge of that protection that you can build into a proper AI pipeline, if you like, is there. And so we spend a lot of time working with clients around their maturity. So like I said, we do a lot of maturity and benchmarking. We don't just do that for asset management, Joe. We actually do that for AI and data science maturity. We actually do that for asset condition assessment maturity as well, and maintenance management maturity. So it's a whole thing. So with our AI and machine learning data science maturity assessment, going through that process really breaks down those things. And what we don't want ever as a business is to deliver a chatbot, because that is only just scratching the surface of what we can do, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. It shows maybe my lack of knowledge. I think when I think of AI, I always just think of a chatbot, right? So again, upskilling, try to upskill myself, of course, and upskilling others by listening to people like yourself that really understand it and understand the subjects. And again, education is the key there, right? I think for breaking down those barriers to answer the question, which is brilliant. So, any good stories that you really want to share, or any real highlight in your career that you think is, you got any great stories that you'd love to share with a listener that you can think of?
Yeah, I love talking about the bad things.
Yeah, I'd love to hear an example.
We talk a lot about how good we are, right? Especially on LinkedIn, but
Yeah, we sure
I've
do.
got some shockers,
Me
and
too,
I've
mate.
got
Me
some
too.
real regrets. And we actually all do, right? Like, and that's the
Absolutely
thing.
do.
We actually all do. And when you become a parent, you sort of start to really appreciate the imperfections in people and decision making. I remember, Joe, working at the paper mill. I remember the largest failure that I was ever involved in. And like I said, I was an engineering manager. So the buck stopped with me when it came to maintenance, reliability engineering. We had a very robust vibration analytics program. We had pretty well fine-tuned oil analysis program, Joe, and it still fell over because of the human. And perhaps you could start to appreciate why maybe AI and machine learning could have helped us back then, but they weren't a thing. So we had a vacuum blower in the paper mill. So a lot of paper industry is vacuum is essential to control the paper. If you picture a large fan blower running, close to 7,000 RPM, rotating element of that blower, picture around 3.5, 4 ton, hooking at 7,000 RPM. There's a lot of energy there. That's supported by white metal bearings in there, so really, really quite interesting. I got the call. It's always at 2 a.m, and maybe that's just me changing the story a
I've
little
been
bit,
there
but
as
it's
well.
always at 2 and
Maybe many times.
yeah. So 2 a.m, rocks around. I get the phone call. An hour later, I'm on site, and I'm looking at the stationary element of this blower that's still bright red. And what has happened is these bearings have failed. Long story short, that rotating element had been rubbing against the stationary element at 7,000 RPM for a good few hours. And so it was carnage, absolute carnage. We're talking $1 million a day in lost production at that paper mill. We were down for 7 days. So you can do the maths there. Australian manufacturing. So, I'm surprised I didn't get fired, but lucky me. At the end of the day, we saw the, I suppose, flags from our condition monitoring program in the oil analysis space: white metal bearings, Babbitt material, tin. You're looking for tin, right? TN in your oil analysis. We saw it. The reliability engineer failed to act upon it. Me as a manager failed to oversee that, failed to provide the right training, and in the end of the day, we cost the business $14 million through that. Maintainability was really poor, Joe. We had to knock down 2 walls to get that blower out, right? So we literally built the paper mill around the asset. As my biggest stuff up ever, and it sticks with me today. And again, how could we have used machine learning and AI to give us better insight into something going on there? Certainly there was an opportunity, Joe.
Do you think stories that you've got in your career like that really ignite that passion for thinking we could have caught that? We saw the signs.
Absolutely. And as a salesperson, Joe, that's invaluable, right? And being able to say, hey, look, here's a story, right? This is me. This is the story of me. And maybe I put some fluff around it around 2 a.m. and things like that. But it is a very relatable story, and people are drawn to storytellers. So being able to leverage your mistakes, your failures, the things I tell my children all the time is it's okay to fail. You only become a loser when you stop trying. And that resonates even more with me in my work, Joe.
Yeah, brilliant. I think you learn. I'm not sure about yourself, right? But you learn so much more of your failures than you do of your successes, of course.
Yeah.
But again, a great story, right? And a really good example of like you say, that human element. And you really took. I can feel from you there. You really took responsibility for that. Of course, being the leader, which is the right thing to do as a leader. We take the hit when it goes bad, and we give out the praise when it goes well. Of course, like you say, the warning signs were, and I think the answer, AI, machine learning, certainly could have rang that alarm a little bit louder for you, and given more of a heads up. So yeah, great example, Shane. So thank you for that. I appreciate you using a failure story as well. So thank you for being vulnerable.
You're welcome.
Shane, wrapping up, I asked Trent the same question, so maybe I'll get another great guest from yourself. But have you got any recommendations of someone else we should get on? Anyone you think would be great? Again, the podcast is quite broad. It's industrial. You may have seen a few people already in lots of different industries. But any recommendations?
Yeah, and a little bit of a change of pace. I'm really recommending 2 people. Can I do 2, Joe? Do you mind if I do 2?
Please, more the better.
Scott Henderson at Thermaline is a great friend of mine and a real mentor of mine from the SKF days. Scott has actually, this is great for you, Joe, not planned. Scott used to maintain the RAF helicopters and has toured as a service officer there. So Scott now has a wonderful little business. So actually, I don't do it justice. It's not little. He has a wonderful business doing condition monitoring and training as well. So Thermaline is his business, and they do a great job. So that's Scott Henderson. And lastly, probably Travis Suter. Travis is embarking on more of a psychology asset management path as well, and I don't fully understand it or appreciate it, but it's really cutting edge what he's doing, and he's starting to leverage AI in helping leaders recognize their cognitive biases in their decision making, which is a real problem in asset management. So Scott Henderson and Travis Suter are my recommendations, Joe.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I know them both. Again, following both. I sound like I live on LinkedIn here, but again, I enjoy the content Travis puts out, and I know Scott maybe isn't. From what I can say, I don't think he's as active, but I'm aware of his business as well. So yeah, I'll be sure to reach out to him. Shane, it's been fantastic. It's been a really interesting conversation. I've learned a lot. I think it's really fascinating what you're doing with your business, SAS Asset Management, and especially around AI and around data, right? So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out, and good luck in the future with your business, and look forward to following your journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shane.